Okay, Jose, I'm sorry, Leone, I think we are live now. Um, okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Flap's Facebook Live today. Today, as guest, we have Leone Jose Bigire, founder and executive director at Working Family Solidarity. And my name is Michelle Velasquez, and I'm the bilingual advocacy coordinator at Flap. Hi, Leone. Thank you for being with us today and for taking time out of your busy schedule for this conversation. We really appreciate speaking with you and having our community learn more about working family solidarity.
I'm super glad to be here. Thanks for having us. And I think we look at the work that you all are doing at FLAP, supporting workers, helping get them oriented. And I think that's such an important thing for us. So as you mentioned, my name is Leone Jose Bicchieri. It's a Mexican and Italian mix. An immigrant from Italy was my father, and my mom's from Mexico City. My preferred pronouns are he, him, his. And I'm the founding executive director of Working Family Solidarity. And in Spanish, we go by Solidaridad de Familias Trabajadoras. We started 5 years ago. And in this part, I'm just going to briefly say that our mission is to unite low and moderate income workers, but also not just for their labor rights and better jobs, but for their right to decent housing. So we sort of started to try to kind of put those together, because or else we fight so long and get a tiny raise, and then they raise our rent. It might even be the same company owning the company where we work, and then also like the apartments where we live. So we wanted to kind of come back at that, to have low-wage families of color, especially African American and Latinx families, be able to fight for equitable development. I worked 10 years in the farm labor movement before I moved back to the Midwest in 1999. On the West Coast, I worked full time. So it's really, really wonderful to be staying in contact with folks who are working in all kinds of different farm worker and landscaping stuff. So we really look forward to working more closely with FLAP in the future.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you for definitely giving us an overview of Working Family Solidarity and your background. And before we get started in our conversation today, I wanted to also highlight the services that FLAP has and the resources we currently have for the Latinx farm worker and the worker community in general in Illinois. FLAP is an organization that's mission is to improve the working conditions and opportunities for low-income workers and their households in industries such as cannery, farms, greenhouses, landscaping, nursery, packing houses, restaurants, and snow plowing in the winter. And those are just to name a few. FLAG carries out this mission through advocacy, community outreach, community legal education. And what that looks like is through conducting outreach in the state of Illinois and presenting Know Your Rights in the field to workers, referring workers and families to other legal relevant resources. And we also partner with local and more nationally known organizations to be able to serve our community. During this pandemic, FLAP has been able to facilitate access to cash transfers to low-income workers and their families. We, of course, do our work and serve our community members regardless of their immigration status. FLAP, first and foremost, educates workers about their rights in the workplaces. We build relationships with churches, consulates, and other organizations to carry out these presentations. Our staff travels to different parts of the state in order to make sure workers are able to get this information. FLAP has also partnered with more than 150 organizations and a network of attorneys that handle cases to defend folks if they aren't being paid a minimum wage, for overtime, if they're being forced to pay for their uniforms or equipment for their jobs, and resources for workers' compensation and accidents that occur in the workplace. And just if anyone would like to contact FLAP, you can do so directly on our Facebook page or by calling 888-451-3527. That is the number to our direct hotline. And again, the number is 888-451-3527. And you can also find that on our social media pages. I want to give a quick shout out that we have a financial assistance option for low income workers in cities like Cicero, Berwyn, Maywood, and Melrose Park, and resources to be able to give laptops to working families living in King County. If anyone knows of folks who live in these towns or counties and are a low income Latinx undocumented worker experiencing a financial hardship brought on by this pandemic, please give us a call, message us through Facebook, or again, message us through any social media page. And with that being said, I wanted to say a bit about the purpose of this Facebook Live. At FLAP, we want to uplift the work that our partners do and show our community the commitments that our partners or organizations we collaborate with have made towards workers' rights. Working Family Solidarity has been a great partner to FLAP, so we want to hold this space for this conversation with you, Leonie. So today we really want to highlight the connection between racial justice and the labor rights movement with our community. And we believe Working Family Solidarity has been doing a great work of including the intersectionality of these two issues. And so I know you've been a great leader and at the forefront of this movement. And so, with your introduction and with, this perspective in mind, I wanted to start the conversation by asking if you can tell us a bit more about Working Family Solidarity, how it came to be, and how exactly you were able to grab hold of this initiative.
Yeah, so thanks again for having me, Michelle. So, I've worked in the labor movement for a couple decades in the worker rights movement. But I mentioned earlier briefly that I had worked about 10 years full-time in the farm labor movement. So I was a full-time organizer, and I was also a member of the board of directors of PECUN, Pineros y Campesinos Unidos del Noroeste. It's Oregon's farm worker union. And so I was there for pretty much all the 90s. And then I came back to this part of the country to be closer to my mom, and at that time, my abuelita in Milwaukee. And then I was offered a job down here, and one thing led to another. And I've been here for a long time in Chicago. But I've always seen that intersection between rural, urban, workers of different backgrounds. I've worked since I came to Chicago. I worked on a lot of national campaigns where I spent long periods of time in Arkansas, North Carolina, Georgia, Missouri, Kansas. So I was working sometime with farm labor, but also a lot of times with poultry, meat packing, pork processing workers, some poor white folks, Asians, but a lot of Latinx immigrants, Somali immigrants, a lot of African Americans. And I think what really struck me, Michelle, and struck me also as a little child, coming from a family, my father's from Italy, mom from Mexico. My parents divorced when I was a little guy. My father remarried a white woman from Maryland. My mother remarried an African-American man from Cincinnati who was involved in the civil rights movement. My mom was involved in the Chicano movement. And as a Chicana, also fighting for a space as a woman within that movement. So, I grew up kind of seeing how we have to fight as workers, but that the wealthy elite in this country and worldwide, I've lived a number of years outside of the United States, and it seems the similar, and that is that the most rich people in the society have kind of found a way to keep us fighting each other as low and moderate income workers, instead of uniting to really demand justice in terms of work and housing and things like that. So I had been the executive director of a worker center here in Chicago for almost 8 years. In 2016, I decided to found Working Family Solidarity. And so not just continuing in labor organizing, so for more, good jobs and also rights at the jobs that we do have, but also living in Pilsen for a long time at that time already in 2016, I was seeing neighbors being forced out. Doña Victoria, 40 years here, and she's gone. And it's like, what did she do wrong? She got up every morning at 4 a.m., made tortillas, worked from 5 to 7 or 8, had a small business maybe in Pilsen, cutting people's hair. What did she do wrong? Nothing. And she does not deserve to be kicked out. But what did I hear living in Pilsen? Leone, calm down, stick to labor rights, make sure people get paid what they should. But you are trying to oppose, and you've probably heard this, but I'm sick of this, and I got sick of this. And they would say these are natural market forces. Natural market forces, as though humans are not deciding all these laws, that property should even have value, right? Who decided that? And that the value should go up. Why? Well, because someone decided it. These are not natural forces. It's the same rich people that own the companies, that own the orchards, that own everything, where rural and urban workers work. Sometimes you go to the top of it, you'll find the same private equity company at the top that owns the apartments where we're paying everything we earn, and then at the company. So what we did, Michelle, is kind of simple in a way. Perdón. It was kind of simple. We just said, hey, we want to keep organizing around worker rights and see ourselves as a worker-based organization, struggle to join all workers together to be powerful, because the majority of the world, we're workers. We get up every morning and we sell our labor, physical, mental, emotional, whatever. And unless you're independently wealthy, which puts you among the 1% of all humans on earth, then you're a worker. And I don't care if you make a fair amount of money, you're a worker. And so we just thought, what if we keep fighting for worker rights, especially racial unity, because they keep us fighting each other, especially African Americans and Latinx people. I'm tired of it. I'm so tired of it, right? We Latinos are now rejoicing because, oh, we're the biggest minority in Chicago. We've taken it over from the Black people. And so what? So what? How are we doing? We're doing great. We're doing awful. We're getting gentrified. In Pilsen, where I live, gentrification is just, it will make you sob and cry. 200,000 African Americans moved out, workers, right? And their families moved out of Chicago in the last 15 years. So there's nothing to rejoice about. We have to join together with African Americans, and white workers, unfortunately, think they're better than we are, unfortunately, but they're our natural allies. So that's how we started, Michelle, is just kind of a natural evolution of let's continue fighting for labor, but let's add a component where the workers we organize must have decent housing, or we can't really ever do labor organizing.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this also reminds me a little bit about the conversations that were happening last year during the summer, during when a lot of Black Lives Matter protests were happening, and conversations here in different Latinx neighborhoods of Chicago, in Chicago, I should say, where, yeah, you could see that that rift a little bit between both Black and Latinx communities. And so yeah, what you said right now just definitely reminded me of that. And I think, a lot of what you said also, unfortunately, people are still fighting for. And so I noticed that Working Family Solidarity believes in building racial unity for economic security. And when I read that, that really resonated with me, because like you said, there's, brown and Black folks are still fighting for, housing, economic security now. And I think, you touched a little bit about this right now, but why do you think the intersections of racial justice and the labor rights movement is so important?
If you, in my opinion, and in our view at Working Family Solidarity, we believe that a couple things. Number one, it is impossible to strategically, leaving morals out for a moment. Moral is a really good reason to do things for the right reasons, but thinking strategically about building power, it is impossible to have any kind of labor movement that has any kind of power anywhere on earth, and in the United States is no exception, without extinguishing racism. It's just a simple fact. It's a scientific fact. You cannot have poor human beings who get up in the morning to sell their labor start to think first about, oh, that worker over there is a different color, different gender, different sexual orientation, different anything, right? Your first thought has to be, he, she is a worker. I'm a worker. We'll figure out every other difference some other time. But we both are selling our labor to the same person who's laughing all the way to the bank when we fight. And so what many people in the labor movement, many who would describe themselves as labor leaders, right? They often end up tending to their own membership and kind of getting closed into that, like, hey, I'm going to make sure my members have some good union work, as opposed to having a view of what it means to have a labor movement, not just a union. And poor workers of color must be leading that movement because we're the most oppressed workers. And so you can't have anyone else leading this. So if you truly believe in the labor movement, then it must be easily your next logical reasoning that you must attack and destroy racism, simply because there is no other way to build unity among workers. And race, in my experience, there's a lot of other things, but race, because it's so quickly seen, right? You can quickly see and move groups apart based on language, ethnicity, things that you see or hear within seconds, right? And we're all trained, we Latinx people are trained since little folks to see African Americans as our competitors, right? And so until we consciously accept, kind of like an alcoholic, right? Like, I'm an alcoholic, then you start to go, gosh, I have to redo my whole worldview. And so we have to do that as human beings. So for Latinx people, we have to look at African Americans and we have to say, you know what? That's a worker. They're a little darker than I am. They have a little different culture. They have a very similar oppression, incredibly similar. They have more of the civil rights, criminal justice approach to crushing them. We have a little more of the migra, right, an immigration approach to crushing us and telling us that you're a little closer to white than the black folks. So if you're a good Latinx person, don't cause a fuss. We'll give you a little bit of a better job than the black folks. And we have to reject that completely, both because that has integrity. You don't tear other people down to lift yourself up. That's disgusting. But number two, strategically, Michelle, we're a very powerful number of 40%, are we almost 45 in the United States, and even bigger in Chicago, right? Latinx and African American workers. If we can come together and really see each other as sisters and brothers, we could make tremendous changes. So we believe it's a really natural thing to do, and that it strategically can make both groups very powerful.
Thank you. I think that those are powerful statements. I do agree that, and I think this goes for other movements, right? I think it all starts with racial justice, because that is really on the forefront of a lot of the issues here. And so, yeah, definitely wanted to uplift that as well. And I wanted to, as I can, and I'm hoping, the your passion can be transmitted through this Zoom call, but I can see that there's you definitely are passionate about this and about your work. And so what interests me in knowing is I did hear about your family background, but other than that, what has led you to follow and lead in this type of work?
When I was a little guy, I was exposed, like I said, I was very lucky that my mom was an activist and a woman of color, immigrant from Mexico City. And my stepfather, who spent considerable time, with me as a little guy, was African American, not just African American, but he was active in the civil rights movement. And, you know, a lot of stuff that I saw as a little guy, I couldn't process as a child. I kind of just, you're sponging this all in, right? So civil rights and this and that and violence and, you know, kind of like, huh? And my mom would take us to all these leaflets, right? For the wine, the grape boycott and the lettuce boycott. And I remember one time my younger brother Pedro and I were leafleting in southern Wisconsin, and we lived in the Beloit and Madison area, and then later Milwaukee, and then later I came to Chicago. But at that time we were leafleting stores, so I was 8, 10. And I remember one time we were leafleting, we weren't asking people not to go in, and we were supposed to not ask them, you know, strongly not to buy, just to consider it, to read. And it was the United Farm Workers. It was around the grape and lettuce boycotts. Ironically, here I am talking to Flap, right, about farm worker issues. But there, I remember a white couple, and to me, they seemed like 8 feet tall, right? Because I was a little guy. So my little brother, Pedro, and I were standing there. Folks were going to come in. And, you know, I handed out the leaflet. We had the little training and stuff, and I was there with a group of adults, of course, not alone. But I said, "Excuse me, sir, would you please read this, and before you decide if you're going to buy lettuce or grapes, we would really appreciate it." And we were told to be very polite, stay out of the way, don't block anyone. And he grabbed it from my hand, crushed it. Not everyone did this, to be fair, but this couple did. This person did. The wife looked very supportive of him, very angry at us. He grabbed it and took it from me and said, threw it down and said, "Puh," and he spit on it and he goes, "I wish you were all dead." You know, I'm like 8, 10, right? And just thinking, damn, right? This is some serious stuff. Like, I believe my parents, and I'm kind of seeing stuff that I don't like, but wow, this is really deep. This guy's like wishing we were dead, and we're just standing here, little kids doing nothing. One time we were at a similar wine boycott, and it was winter, and in southern Wisconsin, and a truck driver who was delivering made his delivery, and he was so angry at us leafleting that, and we weren't bothering him. We weren't saying don't deliver. We were just there doing an informational leaflet, not bugging him at all. But I guess he hated us or something. And so we were there, and he had a huge truck, and he drove it near us, and it was icy, and kind of let his truck skid very dangerously near where we were leafleting. We were little kids. And so I remember a lot of these things, Michelle, I think really, really impacted me. And over time, I began to look into things. You know, at first I wanted to get like 3 or 4 PhDs, because I figured if I knew all this stuff, I could like help make things better. And there's nothing wrong with getting a PhD. But what I felt after a while, Michelle, is, you know, it's good to have PhDs and attorneys. They play a very important role in the movement if they're willing to sincerely fight in the movement, and not always say what should be done, but take direction from poor workers of color. But there's a place for everyone. But I remember thinking, you know, what seems to be missing are organizers of different types, right? But who are helping to really structure this fight in an intelligent, strategic way, so that workers can decide if they can plug their energy into it. And that's kind of what seemed to me to be really important. And I followed my heart. One thing led to another, and here I am.
Wow, that's such a powerful story. I think, you know, I asked this to folks we've had on lives before, and honestly, every person's journey is different, and so and it's unique, and it's also worth learning from as well. I think, you know, folks coming into these spaces and coming into organizing spaces and nonprofit spaces, I think, you know, and I felt this too, the I guess the I you know, sometimes you need a story to be uplifted with. And so I think sometimes with this work, yeah, it causes you to sometimes, you know, need hope up out of somewhere. So you know, I appreciate you sharing that that personal story with us as well. um you know, as I say that, and in your years of doing this work, what has been the biggest quote unquote win for you? I think wins in this type of work come in different shapes and sizes. And so, you know, and then a win for someone may not be that much of a win for another person. But in all, we try to collectively have some moments of joy when we're working in these types of in this type of field, and doing this type of work. So yeah, I'm interested in knowing, yeah, what has been the biggest win for you?
Well, I won't tell you the whole story because we don't have time, but I'll actually give you one from the farm worker movement, ironically with FLAP, but you're going back now to the 1990s. In the Willamette Valley in Oregon. So the Willamette Valley that goes about 110 miles north from the Eugene area into the Columbia River at Portland, right? So it has about 110, 115 miles by about 30, 40 miles wide, very rich and top 10 in all these agricultural products during that time. And I was the one of two organizers. So myself and a fellow who later became the president of the union named Ramon Ramirez, we organized the first union organized strike in the history of Oregon with farm workers at a place called Kramer Farms, Mount Angel, Oregon, in August of 1991, in the pepino, in the cucumber. And at one point in that strike, and I thinking of that because of FLAP, but then similar things have happened to me in the Chicago area and in other parts of the nation before I settled into working in Chicago about 13 years ago. But I would say it's sort of in general the unknown heroes of this. So someone might know Michelle Velasquez, they might know Leona Sevicchieri, but you and I know the people who no one knows, right? No one knows. And they're the people who are making changes. And so this one brother, Timoteo Lopez Garcia, and how long ago was that, right? I know him. I can remember his exact name, from Sola de Vega, Oaxaca, of Triqui background. He spoke Spanish and Triqui. He was the leader of this large group of indigenous workers, largely indigenous workers, Mixtecos, Zapotecos, and Triqui from Oaxaca. And so we start this strike. I'll leave out a lot of the details. It ended up being somewhat, well, very successful in the sense that we got some of our demands, and it was the first time ever, so it was really huge. But there was a point where one of the Kramers, one of the patrones, one of the owners, drove his big pickup truck out into the field. We were not supposed to go into the field, but we did. We jumped the ditch. Timoteo and myself, I was kind of the lead organizer there, so I knew Timo and all the, and several of us were going out because we were going to talk to some guys who were brought in as scabs, right, as esquiroles to work in the field. They were threatened to do it. So we were going out to talk to them to try to say, hey, man, this is why you should support us. So one of the owners drives his pickup out, stops, right in front of us to stop us from reaching this other thing, gets out of his car, comes over, this big, tall farmer, looks down, and I'm not very tall, and Timoteo was probably a couple inches shorter. And I'd never heard Timo speak English, so I didn't know if he spoke any English, but he spoke Spanish and Triqui, and I don't know what other languages. But this grower comes in and goes, "Stop it, go back!" And Timo, and I'm supporting Timo, but I'm the organizer, so I'm like, hey, I'm not gonna treat him like a kid. Like, I'm gonna support you. I might say something, but you can say something, right? I'm not gonna be the main spokesperson. I'm here with you. And Timo looks at him and goes, "No, no." And then the guy goes, "Yes, you must leave because this is my field, my field." And these are one of the great moments of my life, Michelle, like spiritually, like, oh my God, like I could die at that moment. Like, I'm learning so much. And Timo looks back at him, Michelle, and goes in English and goes, "No, my field, my field." Right? Man, I mean, I just I just sat there just going, "Jay, man, you just said it, right?" Like what did Zapata say, right? The land belongs to those who work it, right? And I remember just sitting there just thinking, man, I'm teaching something, but man, I'm learning so much. And the resolve was incredible. And the grower just had no idea what to say. I swear. He just sat there going, like he even knew it was true. He was kind of like, and he was like, well, just get out, get out. But it was amazing. And I won't go because we don't have time, but I wanted to choose that because I was thinking of FLAP, but I've had similar experiences here in Chicago with temp labor, with manufacturing workers, with industrial laundry workers, Mexican immigrants, Asian immigrants, African Americans, white folks, coming together and saying, hey, you know what, we're going to support each other and making incredible changes. So one of the things that keeps me going is really is that all these people that you and I know that aren't on this, right? And maybe their name won't be in a paper or known by a foundation. But they're sacrificing everything, right? You and I are sacrificing something, but they're sacrificing everything just to open their mouth and say like 3 words. And that inspires me. And I just feel like I'm not going to let that person fight and risk everything. And then I'm not going to have the guts, the freaking guts to even risk that much, right? It's just embarrassing, right? I'm not going to do it. And I'm also, Michelle, I'll close with this for the inspirational part for me. I got a 4 and a 7-year-old. I'll be damned if they're going to grow up in this messed up world, right? Where being Latinx is going to hurt them, where just not being rich is going to hurt them. They might not have Social Security, right, Michelle? When my kids get BS, that's not going to happen. So they're also part of my inspiration.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing all of that. Yes, I definitely agree. I think youth now are, yeah, and it's, I feel like it's cliche to say, youth are the future, but we um well, I will consider myself youth a little bit. But definitely, what we are leaving behind, and it's so, yeah, it's intimidating as well, but also just just the greatest motivation to be better. And so but everything you shared is powerful, and I definitely appreciate, and also on behalf of Flap, we're really grateful to have you as a partner, and also just, yeah, as someone that we're fighting the fight with, because this is honestly the collaborative community that we want to see while we're while we're in this fight. So thank you so much, Ilne, for taking the invitation to come on and tell your story.
Thank you. I had the greatest time, and I loved sharing. And yeah, it's really exciting to be working together. And there's way more of us than there are the really rich people, right? And so the more we can be organized, the more we can translate our numbers into some power, but we just have to have a little more finely tuned unity. So thank you very much for having me, and I hope Flap, and I know Flap will continue to do really great work.
Thank you so much. And for everyone who is watching or will watch, please follow Working Family Solidarity in their social media, and also Flab on social media. And with that, thank you so much, everyone, and have a lovely evening.